Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the final Urban Planning Committee meeting for this year, the 16th of December 2015. In recognising the cultural diversity of our great city, I pay my respects to the local Indigenous people of Moreland by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. I offer my respects to the Wurundjeri elders, past and present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Members of the gallery, please note the urban planning meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's website. This recording will be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised that they may be recorded during the meeting. We'll go through councillors and council officers in attendance this evening. Councillors in attendance, Councillor Megan Hopper, Councillor John Kavanagh, Councillor Lambros Tapanos and Councillor Rob Thompson. Officers in attendance are Group Manager of City Development Philip Priest, Planning Coordinator Darren Camilleri, Planning Coordinator Robert Shatford and Governance Officer Saskia Hunter. Do we have any apologies for this evening?
An apology from Councillor Lita Gillies.
Moved by Councillor Megan Hopper, seconded by Councillor Lambros Tapanos. And can I please have an adoption of the minutes for the meeting on the 25th of November 2015?
So moved, but I noticed in the minutes it says the 30th of November, whereas the meeting took place on the 25th of November.
Oh, right.
Okay.
That will be recorded.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Kavanagh, seconded by... Is there a seconder? Councillor Hopper. Are there any declarations of interest or conflicts of interest to declare this evening? No? Okay. I'll move on to a brief introduction of how the Urban Planning Committee meeting will run this evening. The relevant planner will introduce the report and the officer's recommendations. I'll then give any objectors an opportunity to move to the lectern in front of us to make their submission. After this time, the applicant will be given an opportunity to speak. If you're making a submission this evening, please state your name and address for the record. You're requested to present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you're opposed to the planning application, would you please inform the committee why you are opposed and suggest an alternative approach which would satisfy your concerns? Please use this opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than matters of detail in the officer's report. And there's a time frame of 3 minutes for each speaker, and as chairperson I reserve the right to increase or decrease that time. So we'll move to the presentation of reports now, and the first one we have is 2 Union Street in Brunswick, planning permit application MPS 2014-1047.
Thank you, councillors and members of the gallery. The first item for this evening is an application at number 2 Union Street in Brunswick for the construction of a 4-storey building with a ground level shop, 9 dwellings, a reduction of the standard car parking and a waiver of the loading bay requirements. So the subject site is a short distance west of Sydney Road, so one property back, and noting also that the dual station is just down a short distance to the west of the site. Subject's land is zoned mixed use and it's affected by development control, DCPO, a parking overlay and an environmental audit overlay, and it's in the Brunswick Activity Centre. The context of the site, so to the west of the site, what you'll see is single-storey dwellings, double-storey built form, residential built form to the west. To the east, adjoining Sydney Road, is a 2-storey commercial building. Immediately to the east of the site is also a laneway. That laneway provides access to 8 car parking spaces sleeved to the side and the back of the site. At ground floor, as I mentioned, a retail shop. At first and second floor, there's 4 dwellings, 3 of which are 2-bedroom, one of which is a 1-bedroom apartment. And then at the top floor, the 3rd floor, is a 3-bedroom apartment. So the key planning issues with the application, so the land is affected by the proposed design and development overlay 18. That allows a 25-metre building height. What is proposed by the applicant this evening is a 12-metre building. The Moreland Apartment Design Code doesn't apply because it's a 4-storey building. Car parking, as I mentioned, 8 car parking spaces provided, which seeks a reduction of 2 spaces. Daylight to existing windows, so there's a variation being sought. That's as a consequence of proximity of the building to the boundary, noting that there is, at present, there's a 4 metre high wall on the boundary, the ground floor, adjoining number 8 Union Street. There is some overshadowing of 1 square metre at 10 a.m, and there was overlooking, which has been conditioned in the recommendation. There were 14 objections. There was actually a 15th objection, an additional objection, which I understand came through yesterday by the new owner of number 8 Union Street. So there's, I haven't had a chance to go through, but I understand that the scope of the concerns are contained in the broader list of objective concerns up there. There was no consultation meeting held, but the applicant reviewed all the objections that were received and gave consideration to the concerns and made some revisions to the plans, and that included setting back the first and second floors from the western boundary and reducing the overall dwelling yield. Initially it was 10, it was advertised, it was brought back to 9. So the recommendation is that a notice of decision be granted.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, councillors.
Is there an objector in relation to this application who wishes to speak first?
I'll go first.
Yep, sure.
I'm the owner of 10 Union Street and I've been there for about 8-9 years now.
Yep. And what was your name?
Zen, surname's Wong.
Okay.
I think I've only got 3 minutes. I didn't realise it was so formal. I've just got a few points to make. Having a 4-storey apartment is just, it looks ridiculous if you've ever been in the area, and I think you can see by the pictures, everything else is 1-storey, 2-storey. Even if, the 1-storey buildings are ever going to get developed, they probably only go up by 1. So having that massive difference in height is just going to look out of place for that area, for that landscape. And there were a lot of issues that I had with the plans. Main thing is the overshadowing. I realised that the plans, they noted about the equinox, but they didn't specify which equinox, whether it's during summertime or winter time. And I can tell you, because I've lived there for so long, that during winter, the warehouse at the back on Merri-bek Street, that casts a big shadow over the backyard. So if you add the 4-storey on the side and then the 2 stories that's on 14 Merri-bek Street that casts some shadow in the afternoon, we'll basically have no sunlight in the backyard during winter time. And another thing is parking issue. I've already written several times in the council about the parking issue on Union Street, and with 3 to 5 Union Street, which is the 5-storey apartment across the road, they've got their own parking. I think they've got enough to accommodate for everyone, so they haven't added any more issue. But having 8 parking spots for 10 residential areas plus a business down below isn't going to suffice. Business owners that are running off of Sydney Road, they're already parking their streets down that laneway because there's no parking for them. I mean, they're not blocking me getting to garages and all that stuff, they're just blocking each other, I guess, but it's already affecting them, and adding this would just amount to a bigger problem. And I think it affects the value of the place, having such a big property compared to the low-lying ones. Number 8 Union Street recently went for auction, and one of the people who didn't win, we went and asked them what was their limiting factor, and it's because they did the research and they found out that there was going to be a 4-storey apartment right next to them, and that was the line that they didn't want to cross. They didn't want to pay any more money for something that's going to have this massive thing right there. So ultimately, I think it's going to affect the value of the properties. I mean, building high-density areas and all that stuff, it's supposed to help bring up the value of our little houses, but this one in reverse has actually possibly affected 8 Union Street's value. I had an issue with overlooking, but it seems like they are going to fix the corridor. I had an issue how it was open slats that they could see into my backyard, but if they're going to block it off with glass. And I guess I'm worried about the contamination of the land. I'm not sure if any tests have been done with the soil. I am aware that that property used to be a mechanics, and I think in the planning application, the applicant wrote that 3 to 5 Union Street didn't have issues, so we shouldn't have issues when we're just digging up the foundation. But kind of apples and oranges. You're kind of across the road, and given the history of what that building used to be used for, I do have concerns about that, and I don't know if tests have been done. Because even 139 Sydney Road, they used to be a dry cleaners, and their soil has been contaminated, what I'm aware of anyway. Yeah, so I think they're my main points. And yeah, my major objection is the height. If they could reduce the height, then that's fine, to be in line with everyone else. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, that was really good. Is there a second objector who wishes to speak? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Laura Formica. I don't actually live at Union Street. I'm an owner of that, but it's rented, so it is an investment property that I've owned for over 30 years. And I've seen the scape and the change that's happened in Union Street, and it's quite upsetting. I love the look of the character homes, and I'm really impressed when I take a walk down Union Street and I see the beautiful Victorian homes. Now I've got a double-storey place next to mine, and okay, that's fine. I'm happy with that. But now I've got a 4-storey concrete wall happening at the end of the that little block of Union Street there, and I'm concerned about. I did talk about an overlay. I thought there was a heritage overlay with all those homes there. And originally, I think with our 3 homes that I own and May owns, and now the new owner of number 4, I think it is, on 8. Sorry, 8. So it is different, and I know the look of Brunswick is changing, but the things that I worry about is that out of character look. The size of that brick, that concrete wall there, I think is huge. The fact that the way the inside of the apartments look, the noise factor I'm concerned about, not so much for myself, but even for number 8. I'm at number 12, so it doesn't really matter. I don't really live at the property, that doesn't matter. But for me, it is a home I've owned with passion for 30 years. It is a home that I'd like to move into one day. And why would I want to move there when I've got this great big concrete block there that really, to me, would I want to go for a walk down there? Would I want to go and have a look at that? I don't think so. So I've talked about that out of character, that lot size, the shape far too big for the size of the allotment. But then again, I'm not an architect. I thought the front setback was too close to boundary. Just that architectural style I didn't like, with keeping of the character of the neighbourhood, the lack of landscaping, the building form, again the height, how close it is to the boundary of number 8 Union Street. I mean, that was the reason why the previous owner sold. They were one of the owners that put in an objection when they saw the actual plans. They were mortified. They were the same as us. They've had the property for 20 years. They wanted to retire there. When they saw what was going up next door to them, they were just horrified. So they got out, and unfortunately we have a young lass here who has bought the house unbeknown to herself, thinking about, I'm going to move in here, I'm going to like living in that neighbourhood of Union Street, and now she's got this to deal with. I think loss of property value, quality of build might impact on the value of mine and neighbouring properties, the loss of view and outlook, the increase in noise. Do we ever think about the noise generated by these developments, which will cause a significant loss of amenities in the neighbourhood? And then I've talked about that Union Street, Manalaca Street Heritage citation, that I think it's important that we keep that in mind if we are thinking about houses that were built in 1890. And does this fit in with that? I don't know. Does council want that for Union Street? I don't know. I definitely don't. But that's how I feel. But I've got more of a passionate feel about, Union Street looking like it did and wanting it to be there in 50 years' time, still looking nice. I don't know whether this development will do that, and whether people are going to care about living in a neighbourhood and looking after it. That's my concern with all these big build properties. Who's going to look after them? Most of them are going to be tenanted, and most of them are not going to be looked after like we are as owners. But I leave it with council to decide that. But I do object to the size, the structure and the quality of build.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another objector who wishes to speak?
Good afternoon. My name's Kirthna. My brother and I recently purchased number 8 Union Street, which is directly next to the proposed development. I apologise, I'm going to be reading off my phone a little bit. We did find out very last minute about this, and we were actually in the process of moving our furniture in this weekend, so our application came in very late, and I haven't had a chance to actually write something coherent about this. I feel like a lot of our concerns have been addressed by the previous 2 speakers, but when my brother and I had a look at the plans over the last few days, one of our biggest concerns were that the 3 windows that we have all face in the east, which border onto the proposed development. We don't actually get direct sunlight through those windows at the moment, but we get infiltrated light, so those rooms are full of light as they currently are. The living space is full of light, and we're entirely reliant on the light that comes in through that side of the house. If a 4-storey building were to go up there that's 12 metres high, we wouldn't get any of that light, which would mean that we would be reliant on artificial light all year round. The other thing is our backyard. In the proposed plans, I don't actually believe that the predicted shadowing that's been provided is accurate, as it seems to it seems to take the line of our pergola as opposed to the building line. So we actually think more than 75% of our backyard will be obscured for less than and we won't get sunlight for more than 5 hours a day, or 5 hours a day between the hours of 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. To avoid sort of repeating the concerns of the previous 2 speakers, I'd just like to quickly speak about why we actually purchased the property. While we understand that the proposed development is situated in a mixed-use zone, we don't think this diminishes the responsibility of developers to use careful design consideration to enhance the character of the neighbourhood and respect the amenity of the adjoining and adjacent properties. We understand the need to provide high-density living in this area, but we do believe that the design response that has been provided does not seek to integrate or contribute at all to the overall landscape. And we think that, in particular with the contemporary modern style of a number of structures which are currently situated directly opposite to our property, the aesthetic charm of our section of Union Street is already diminished, and the construction of the proposed structure will further shift the balance away from the street's existing style and characteristic. I note again that 8 to 14 Union Street is a precinct that was listed in the 2001 Moreland Heritage Review as a place of local historical and architectural significance. And in part, it was the charm and character of this area of Brunswick's neighbourhood which drew us to recently purchase our property here. There are a few other places that we feel have these sorts of strips where residential streetscapes, which were constructed in the 1880s and 1890s, can sort of seamlessly coexist and complement the predominantly commercial and industrial character of busy streets like Sydney Road. And we think that the look will entirely be destroyed by having a proposal that looks like this on the corner of our street. That's basically it. So I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to address our concerns.
Thank you for presenting. Is there another objector who wishes to discuss this application? No, there's no further objectors present for this application. Is there a representative for the applicant present? Yes, do you wish to address us on this application?
Yes, I probably will. Yes. Sorry,
can I just forward you with that, or?
So, is this
Yeah, so it's like a written submission, so if you can read through it whilst I'm addressing it.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. You can summarise it and
Okay, yeah, that's
present
fine.
it orally.
Okay, so the site, I'll just talk about the site first. The subject site is located on the northern side of Union Street. It is rectangular in shape with an overall area of 365 square metre and zoned mixed use. It is currently occupied by a single-storey brick building used as a restaurant. The site is accessible from side and rear laneways. Located between Jaywell train station and Sydney Road, the site is close to all amenities and services and is within the Brunswick Activity Centre. The surrounding area is occupied by a mix of commercial and residential buildings, including the most recent high-density 5-level residential development at number 3 Union Street, outside being number 2 Union Street, which is directly opposite the subject site. The application consisting of ground floor level shop and the original application consisted of ground level shop and 10 dwellings over 4 levels, was initially lodged in November 2014. The application was advertised in May 2015, and Council received 14 objections. Since then, a consultation meeting with Council's planning officer was held to accommodate concerns raised by the objectors. Subsequently, the proposal was amended to further minimize the development impact on adjoining properties, including the proposed western boundary wall set back 1.5 metre from the western boundary adjacent to the dwelling at number 8 Union Street, and total number of apartments being reduced from 10 to 9. We believe that the proposal meets the objectives and strategic of the local planning policy framework by incorporating dwellings at the upper levels and a shop at ground floor levels, which provide an active and pedestrian-friendly street environment. The proposed building form, height, and external appearance is in line with guideline of Design Development Overlay Number 8 of Moreland City Council and is appropriate to the context of surrounding urban village living. In assessing against Clause 55 of the planning scheme, the proposal meets most of the compliance criteria of the standards and meets all of the objectives. The proposal provides a good level of internal amenity to the proposed apartments, including adequate access to daylight, natural ventilation, outdoor area, on-site car parking, bicycle and storage spaces. The proposal will provide a variety of extra housing stock within the area, which respect the characteristic of the adjoining architecture. The amended proposal causes no detrimental impact to the amendment of the adjoining properties. The amended proposal is supported by Council's planning officer, urban designer, and strategic transport and urban safety branch. Therefore, as above, we respectfully seeking a favourable decision from Council's Urban Planning Committee by granting the permit for the above development.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all we're going to say.
Thank you.
All right,
Are there
thank
any
you.
questions from councillors for the applicant or officers?
I just had a clarification, if that's okay. The applicant mentioned that there was a consultation, but reading the report, it states that, in fact, there was no consultation because the applicant said they wouldn't attend. Can I just clarify that?
Yeah, there was a consultation meeting between me as applicant, the owner, and the council's, two of the council's planning officer.
Was there a reason that you chose not to
Yes,
attend a consultation with residents?
I was advised by the landowner that the immediate owner of number 8 Union Street, the property was sold during that period, and was sold via auction. And I believe there was a one further down which was sold as well. So therefore, we because of that, we saw maybe
the people that you would be meeting with would not be the people affected.
So all right.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Kavanagh?
Can I ask our planning officers the reason for not having a consultation meeting on this one?
Yes, councillors. So the planning officer responsible for the application and myself, we had put it to the permit applicant to query, whether consultation would occur. The applicant wasn't willing to participate in a consultation session.
Just on that point, if the applicant indicates an unwillingness, that automatically stops any possibility of a consultation. Is that correct?
Essentially, there's no benefit in a consultation between the applicant and the objectors if the applicant isn't going to attend. We can certainly consult still with objectors, but that would obviously be one-on-one as opposed to with the applicant.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Can I ask one more question? Just on the upper level, the balconies. Am I right reading those as balconies on the what I call the fourth level? They call it ground first and second and third. But on the third level, am I right that there are balconies from the bedrooms?
That is correct. On the third level, so the third level is a 3-bedroom apartment, and the balcony is located on the northern side of the development. So facing, I think it's Merri-bek.
Facing north.
You're facing north, so
Yeah.
you've got the laneway at the back of the site and the laneway along the eastern side of the site.
And nothing on that boundary?
Nothing along the west.
And the east or not?
And nothing along the eastern side at that level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Can I ask a question?
Councillor Thompson?
The overshadowing diagram, there was some contention as to whether it was overshadowing the building or overshadowing the pergola, or is there any custom light on the overshadowing?
I can, Councillor Kavanagh.
Thompson,
I apologise. There is shadowing at 10 a.m. From the proposed development.
So is that where you've got your cursor?
That is correct. That 1 square metre.
Is that a pergola though, that you have your cursor over the top of?
No, so that part is the actual exposed to the sky, clear to the sky, open space. I understand, and I'm happy to be corrected by the new owner of number 8, that there is a pergola at the back of the house, and that line.
Yes, there is.
Would you speak to the residents from number 8? If they
Yes,
clarify.
I believe that's the pergola line.
Hello. Yes.
That is the pergola, that box there,
Yeah.
Yes.
and is it open to the sky?
Yes.
Okay, so that's actually in shadow, all of that area there,
Yes.
plus the extra.
No,
one
that's a rooftop of that pergola. There is a roof over the pergola.
There's no roof on the
That's
pergola.
it,
It's
but-
entirely light. You can't.
From the
May I speak, please?
Just
explain it.
very briefly. It's
I'm a carpenter, so
Okay.
I can explain it.
That's okay.
Basically, it's a timber frame.
Yep.
It has rafters. There is nothing in between the rafters.
understood.
We can actually see it on Google Maps, councillors.
Yeah, you can
Thank
see
you.
it from the aerial photograph that area there is a roof over that area, and it's also shown on the land surveyor's drawing. So it's to the rear of that where it says private open space that is open to it, but to that extent where the horizontal line is, that's where my understanding from land surveyor's drawing that and also from my measurement from on site, that is to the extent of the pergola, and there is roof over that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just with the extra overshadowing there, so the existing overshadowing line is which one?
The additional overshadowing.
And so the existing line of shadow is represented on which line?
I don't believe that has been shown on the shadow plans.
So how do we know that is the extra overshadowing as opposed to over the top of the pergola as well? If you were to assume that the pergola is also open-aired, as it is, the overshadowing now not be cast across the top of the pergola?
At present, there is a shadow cast over the top of. There would be shadow cast over the top of the pergola. So at the moment, what we have is a wall along the boundary here. The additional shadow is created as a result of increasing the height of that.
Just in the corner?
That is correct. So to achieve compliance, so as to achieve no additional shadowing, it would need to be set back 1 metre from the corner. So 1 metre in from the northern boundary and 1 metre in from the western boundary.
Just point of clarification, that's just additional shadowing at the equinox though, isn't it?
That's it.
There
So-
will be additional shadowing at the shortest day, won't there?
Yes, so that's based on March-September equinox.
Yeah.
Winter solstice obviously longer, summer solstice shorter.
Less, okay.
Just to clarify, the additional shadowing for 10 a.m. is only 0.5, like
that's
less
right.
than,
Yeah.
less than half square meter. And for the 11 a.m. is only quarter of square meter, so it's very minimal.
Madam Chair, could I move an adjournment, please?
Moved by Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a seconder for an adjournment?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Hopper. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried.
Can you give an explanation as to what we're going to do then to the gallery?
Yes, after the discussion, we'll give an explanation as to what we've discussed in private so that you're fully aware of what's going on. It won't be long at
Just
all.
so we don't embarrass ourselves by
That's
arguing
okay.
here in front of.
It's not that, I just want
Yes, some of them.
That's why I said, we could just run it for the smoke. We're going
So do we know that it's
I don't know that you're.
Don't care.
we're not.
I hear. There's a blog. If you go online, there's a blog of people writing in the council. Oh my God, the complaints. They're called the worst council. There is a blog. On Moreland Council. Look it up when you go home. Google Moreland
I
Council.
did, yeah. That's what I said to
Moreland
that.
Council complaints.
Yes.
And they're like, everything is just by the wayside. You've got urban planners that are really not planners, really don't care. You just, I have dealt with 4 different planners when the one went up next door to me at 14. Never returned my call. Never interested in dealing with me. Really, never returned my call. And it was just a matter of fact. Yeah. Never return my call, never did anything. So really, and then they move on. Don't care. You know, don't care. It's like us. I've had that house for 30 years. Don't care. You know, when I bought it, Union Street was beautiful.
Yeah,
You know,
I live in New Brunswick, the last 20,
it's ruined. It's ruined, yeah. It's ruined. It's not even more Brunswick now. It's all about.
next to
Next to, sorry, what's your name? And the poor lass has just bought that house, knowing, didn't know that this was going on.
When you turn from Sydney Road.
Yeah, when you turn from
As you
Sydney
come
Road,
from
you know where the
Sydney
pub is?
Yeah,
Between one up, just one up there. Yeah, yeah, so the pub's there, and they put that, you know, where that old, like factory used to be.
Yeah.
They put those across there. So we've got these 3 little houses just sitting there. 1, 2, 3, 3 little houses. Construction on one side. And you can't knock them down because they're heritage listed with an overlay. So what's the problem with the overlay? In Manamaca that was, you know, built in 1890,
The corner was the butcher shop, then there was a little shop. It was beautiful, that little area.
Yeah.
Let's build it up, make it look nice. Let's put some, landscape there, not a concrete jungle. And the gentleman that wants to build it, he's good cares. He's a Chinese developer. He's not interested. See you later. He's not going to hang around. He's not going to hang around. Yes. Oh,
Can I have a motion to reopen the meeting? Moved by Councillor Hopper, seconded by Councillor Kavanagh. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Councillor Thompson?
I'd like to move the recommendation as presented on
Page
page
3.
whatever it is, and if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it with a level of reservation.
Is there a seconder in relation to this application?
Well,
Yep.
I'll second then.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Tapanos.
These particular applications put us in a little bit of difficulty when we stand here in front of residents that live here in the single-storey homes that are next to this particular area and speak with a fair degree of passion about where they're living. The particular area that we're looking at, being Union Street and close to Jewel Station, is one of those areas that we have earmarked for development and extensive development along the Sydney Road and the precinct that bounds it. In particular, this site could go up to 25 metres, so the reality is that this is an underdevelopment of this particular site, and whilst that is of little comfort to those living next to it, it is, for the bulk of us, an opportunity to say, well, it could be worse. You're not going to like that, and I know that you're not going to like that, having moved in straight away. No, I wouldn't like it, absolutely, but in consultation with the community, the wider community of Moreland, we chose locations that we did not want to develop, and we chose locations that we did want to develop. And those areas that we did want to develop are the growth corridors that we see of Lygon Street, Nicholson Street and Sydney Road. And much consultation was put in place to come up with those decisions, and each of those particular precincts we've gone down to the nitty-gritty and put down a path of where we want buildings to be developed and at what height we want those to be developed. And this particular location falls smack bang in the middle of those at 25 metres. Whilst this is an undevelopment of that, and that the applicant has made some amendments to appease some of the concerns that you have, they will not meet all of yours. I am sorry for those that are living next door to it, but on a whole, looking at the whole of Moreland, this is the area that we would like to be developed, close to public transport, close to trams, close to trains, so that we can waiver car parking and other requirements that we're prepared to accept here, and that will be cold comfort to you, but unfortunately we are thinking of the wider community here.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Tapanos, do you wish to speak?
I'll speak briefly, and these are difficult decisions, but councillors make decisions based on the planning scheme, and sometimes we try to take into consideration what may happen if our decisions are appealed to VCAN and whether that would end up having a better outcome or an outcome that is more detrimental to residents. And when you do see that our planning scheme, which is the guiding document which we need to make decisions based on, enables a building of, sorry, council officers, what height was it?
12 metres.
Of 12 metres, and this comes in significantly less, is that correct?
Sorry, the building height is 12 metres, and the DDO allows 25 metres. 25 to 12 metres. So, I mean, these strategic documents, whether we like it or not here, have gone through a very detailed planning process, including an independent panel and signed off by the Minister. So I ask residents to think about it this way. If this were to go to VCAT and substituted plans were to come in for 5 and 6 stories, I don't know what they would say. I suspect they would say it complies. So 4 stories is actually probably a compromise that people could potentially live with. I know residents would like to have it significantly less, and I'm not sure whether that adjacent open space, whether it's
open or whether it's sheltered or whether it's see-through with some sheltering back enables the sun to go through. I don't think that would take much. That would be a big consideration, considering the zone that it's in, considering the fact that those heights were allowed. They obviously were done so thinking that that is the area that should be developed, and any increase, even if it's just one more story, will probably overshadow that section. So I can't see how this decision can't go through, and I think if we were to reject this, we possibly open the door for an even worse amended planning permit that's even higher to be approved at VCAT. So I just urge residents to consider that.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Any further speakers?
Yeah, I'll
Councillor
speak
Hopper?
quickly. Thank you. So just so that residents in the gallery are aware, obviously we took a short break to discuss this matter a little bit further. For me, my question was in relation to the pergola and the fact that it is open rather than closed. If that had been taken into consideration, would that have been a determinating factor in changing our position on this application? And the response was strongly no. And unfortunately, what happens in areas like this is the reality is an expectation of development and height, and I accept and fully share the devastation that you are probably experiencing as a person who's just purchased at number 8, not aware of what was going to occur next door to you. I imagine this might be your first home that you've purchased, and I can only imagine how distressing that would be to find out that you are now going to be living in a certain amount of shadow to your backyard, and that your windows are going to be looking immediately onto a wall of concrete. But it is the case that this is a particular area of Brunswick situated right next to the train line, which we have earmarked for development as a council. And it is a really wicked problem for us as members of the Urban Planning Committee when you get lovely streets like this where there are still really character-laden older properties that are at a single story, and when changes like this occur for the first time right next door to you, and trying to tread that line between sentiment and I guess what I would like to see next door to me and what I feel about the history of Brunswick and our role as a responsible authority, which is to enact the planning law. And at the end of the day, our role in this committee is to do just that, and this meets the planning law. So I do share and sympathise with your concerns as residents, but this is the planning law, and unfortunately that's our job sometimes.
Thank you, Councillor Hopper. Any further speakers? Councillor Kavanagh?
Yes, I was the one that called for the adjournment because I wanted to clarify the fact of the zoning. The zoning of the property in question is in mixed use zone, and so that's for me is the key. If the zoning was in a residential one, then it's a different amenity that you would expect from that zone. But the fact that it's a mixed use zone means that such an application probably, well, in my view, warrants support. That's not to say I'm not unsympathetic, particularly to the lady who spoke who lived next door and to the other lady who's had the property down the road for a number of years. But because it's in a mixed-use zone, that would therefore mean that it has a different criteria, if you like, to a residential one zone. So that's why I'll be voting in favour of it.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll turn to the officer to sum up the process.
Thank you, councillors. The Urban Planning Committee has decided to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the development as put before us tonight, subject to the conditions contained within the recommendation. Following the issue of a notice of decision, residents have 21 days in which to lodge an appeal through the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. The permit applicant has 60 days in which to lodge an application, should they not be happy with any of the conditions imposed.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the objectors and the applicant for coming this evening. We'll now move on to presentation DED 10715, 611 to 621 Sydney Road, Brunswick, planning permit application MPS 2014-1103.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just start it up here. How does this work? Okay, so the subject site is known as 611 Sydney Road. Brunswick and is best known as the Courthouse Hotel. It's located on the western side of Sydney Road and it's within the commercial precinct of Sydney Road. Immediately to the south of the site, there are two double-storey buildings, and then further south is the Whelan site. To the west, there's an approval for a 7-storey development fronting Breeze Street, and to the north, there's an approval for a 6-storey building fronting Sydney Road. The site is located in a commercial 1 zone and there are a number of overlays affecting the site, but of particular interest is the heritage overlay and the proposed design and development overlay 18, which restricts the height to a limit of 19 metres with a 5 metre minimum setback from the street. This is a photo of the subject site and it's the Courthouse Hotel, a 2-storey building. This image shows, not clearly, but it's the rear of the site, and this image here shows a small parcel of the land that extends down to Breeze Street. The proposal seeks approval for an 8-storey building, which incorporates a tavern on the ground floor, so that is keeping the existing use of the land for a tavern, and 64 new dwellings. This is a cross-section of the proposal. There's a 3-level basement below the 8-storey building. This is just an example of the basement. In terms of demolition, it's proposed to demolish all of the existing buildings on site, except the walls on the boundary, which is the front wall, and 2 walls on either side for a length of 10 metres. This is just a plan of the first floor, which is similar to all the other levels above. It's just really a repetition of the levels. And the 3rd level is set back in excess of the 5 metres of the DDO, which is 10 metres. And the last level, 8th level, is there. Sorry, I just lost my track of thought. This is the elevation of the building. This is the elevation fronting Sydney Road. And this is the rear elevation. This is just a section. There's a significant fall of the on the land, so the rear section of the site is slightly higher than the front. The front reaches about 25 metres, and the rear section of the site reaches 28 metres. There are a number of planning issues with this application, but the main issues are the proposed demolition, retaining only the front facade, the changes to the front facade not being sympathetic to the heritage overlay, the overall height exceeding the DDO, on-site and off-site amenity impacts, some internal amenity issues, and the impact on the Anstey Square to the south, which is a public walkway. 14 objections were received for this application. Most of the objective concerns are similar to those of council, with some additional concerns being car parking reduction and traffic in the area, loss of views from the properties to the south, and property values. The applicant has lodged a failure appeal at VCAT, and council is unable to issue a notice of refusal, but we're recommending that we're recommending that council submission to VCAT be one of refusals. Yeah.
Are there any speakers present in relation to this application? Yes. Are you speaking for or against the applicant? Sorry. So the officers are recommending a refusal for this. Yeah, what's your position?
A refusal, yeah.
So you're supporting the refusal, yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ozzy, Carlton supporter. I'm living in Brunswick for the last 25 years. I really Brunswick moving, and I like really new buildings. But particularly in this area, we have big problem with traffic. Small area, for last 3 years, we have got nearly close to 500 new apartments. And we have only one street, Breeze Street. All these cars in this building have to go from this street. Sometimes I think from my building, 10 minutes to go out. what I see in near future come another 6 or 5 new buildings. This really problem, like jam up already traffic. What about if come another 6 or 7 new buildings, very small area? Like I say, I like new buildings, I like Brunswick moving, but this problem, big problem with traffic. And plus in this area, all buildings 7-story. No, I don't know. It looks a little bit ugly if coming 8. So that's my opinion. And when I bought an apartment 5 years ago, I asked what is in this particular area. He said maximum 7 stories, and all this being around this is 6-7 stories. Coming 8 stories. I buy top dollar to nobody affect my view. Suddenly, it's really affect me. But my big concern is traffic. It's unbelievable. Small area, only one street. Like I said, the last 3 years building another 500 new apartments, and you have to look really about safety, about have to look about people who already are living there. And like I said, in future, what I see coming another 6-7 new buildings. In my opinion, we can't approve it more than 5-6 higher story building in this area. That's. I wish somebody come there to see. That's what I said. But I like Brunswick, moving beautiful buildings, but have to look about safety. Have to look about everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers in relation to this application? Yes, Nick?
Sorry, I didn't lodge an application before. My name's Nick Dolby from West Brunswick. I'd like to address 3 points. If we could have the photo of the front of the Courthouse Hotel up. The Courthouse Hotel was built in 1859. That one there. 1859, if you look on the left-hand side of this photo, you'll notice that there's 4 windows, then there's a break, and there's an addition. Those additional 4 windows are, in fact, part of the original 1859 fabric of this building. There is a substantial amount of the 1859 courthouse still in situ. The rest of the building to the right and to the many elements in the rear were added, I think, 1921 in a remarkably sympathetic facade facade addition. I'd like to see that building in its entirety retained for heritage purposes. I strongly support Council Officer's recommendation that the planning permit for this proposal for this site be refused. That's my first point. Second point, one of the features of this site since its building was that it had open area to the rear of it. I would like to see in the development of this site, I'd like to see some open air retained immediately behind this building. As you on the UPC know, I do not oppose higher density development, but in this case, I want to see that heritage building retained. Third point, there is an easement to the rear of the property. The easement, the narrow carriageway that runs down to Bree Street. For most of the history of this site, that has been open space. It has been publicly used open space. Recently, the property owners have taken that space, marked it off for car parking and parked their cars there, reducing the amenity of that important pedestrian route from Sydney Road through to Anstey Station. With this proposal, what are they going to do with that open space? Are they going to return it, as it has been used for many years, to public open space, allowing a nice transport corridor? Or are they in fact going to use it for their cars, while at the same time there's an alleyway leading to the car parks directly adjacent to it? I would like to see it returned to public use. Those are my objections.
Thank you.
First-hand experience, Nick, from this particular...
Yeah, very much.
Are there any further speakers in relation to this application? Yes, please come forward.
Hello. I'm Mr. Gaetano Saffioti, owner of the 904 apartment. Yeah, I'm objection to this big building. Gee, I would never expect to come this higher. When we bought it 4 years ago, like the gentleman say, it was 4 stories, they tell us. Now we're gonna be another building, 8 story, you know. It will disintegrate the view totally, but I know the view, it's not important for you. Okay, but the view will take our money. Instead of 200,000, for example, if I have to sell, we sell 100,000. You know, it's not fair. Okay, number one. Number two, it will be a lot of traffic. We already have a problem with the Breeze Street problem. A lot of cars. If you go there weekend, you can't park. As the gentleman said, the building behind that beautiful Australian style building, it doesn't look good. Even especially if it's too high, it doesn't look good because you put a beautiful Colosseum, in the back you put progressively storage. It doesn't, but if it's very little bit low, it's okay, because people can't see very much. But I'm not against progress. You know, I like to building, I like to see the building there, but not that high. At least I'm 5, 6 story, 5, 6, not 8, 9. The other point is, will be block our sun. The sun will be blocked entirely because it comes from the north. It's going to be this huge building, and I feel sorry for the people on the ground floor. They're never going to see the sun because there's a line between, you know. It's a line between, so they can never see the sun at the ground floor. Me, just a little bit because I'm on, you know, I'm a little bit higher. And that's the third point. The fourth point, you know, that's it. You know, I'm in 5 or 5, 6 story. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Thanks, Councillor. Simon Martin from Ratio Consultants. I'm here on behalf of the permit applicant. Councillors, you may have received an email from me yesterday, or may have not, and on this speech is obviously building upon that email that I sent through. We respectfully request that the councillors defer their decision on this application until January's UPC meeting, as it is our view it would be premature to make a decision on this application based on the delegate report and plans currently before you. I make this statement based on the following. We lodged the application with Council back in November 2014, 13 plus months ago. The officer's report is written on the basis of advertised plans dated March 2015, again 9 months ago. Our client has been working with Council's planning officers by way of various meetings over the last 9 months, trying to resolve outstanding heritage and built form related concerns. We have lodged 3 concept plans with Council over the course of this 9-month period, with further work being undertaken. Whilst a failure appeal was lodged with VCAT, I note on a day 195, a VCAT mediation is scheduled for this coming Friday. We've submitted a set of further concept plans with the Planning Department, which we seek to table at Friday's mediation. These plans seek to retain the heritage building in its entirety and also make significant built form variations. We further seek to rely on these plans as part of discussions with the planning officers at Friday's mediation, and will be formally substituting these plans on the 22nd of December in accordance with VCAT requirements, that being next Tuesday. The Planning Department's recommendation is based on an earlier set of plans prior to the ongoing discussions and positive dialogue we had with officers. We request that the councillors defer their decision on the application until January's UPC, at which time a decision can be made on the formal VCAT plans prior to the VCAT hearing on the 4th of February next year. We consider this to be an appropriate response considering the history of the application and critical dates moving forward. With respect to objections made, I further note that the application was advertised to 345 people, along with 2 signs on site. The application attracted 14 objections, and as party as the VCAT appeal, there's only 1 person who does not attend. We would say this is a very limited level of interest from the community based on the development before you. But as I said, we would request that the application be deferred until January, and you make your decision on the substituted plans, which will be coming before Council within a week's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll just check if there's any further objections in relation to the planning permit being granted from the gallery. No? Okay. Are there any questions from councillors?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Kavanagh.
How come you haven't formally submitted these amended plans?
We've tabled them as concept plans, as I said. The idea is we'll be discussing with planning officers at Friday's mediation. We're 95% confident that the plans that we're putting forward are what we will be relying upon. We've had 3 or 4 meetings with council officers over the last 2 months, but we wanted to nail down the issues on Friday's mediation and then make the further changes if need be over the weekend.
The reason we have a mediation on Friday is because you brought it failure to make a decision, though, isn't that correct?
Correct, that's correct.
So, I mean, perhaps it would have been better to continue the dialogue along, have the formalised plans and then...
If I could respond to that, we lodged the application, as I said, a year ago. We had our own independent heritage advice that recommended retention of the facade but demolition of the remainder of the building due to various variations that have occurred over the last 130, 40 years, plus a fire that took place in the building in 1921. Both council's heritage advisors provided heritage advice back in March this year and also September that supported the level of demolition. We were notified 2 days out from the October UPC meeting that we understood that the application was going to go up with support. 2 days out from that UPC meeting, we were advised that the application would be actually recommended for refusal based on heritage related concerns. Our client took it upon themselves to lodge that appeal, but with also the goodwill gesture to council that we wanted to work forward, hopefully without the need of February's meeting, if we can actually get to a consented position.
Councillor Kavanagh?
Have you paid more to be on the listing to have the VCAT hearing accelerated? Is that
it was a major cases.
Yeah,
yep, correct. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Done.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Any truth to the flip-flop from council officers on the recommendation and back on that?
Yes, there had been negotiations that had been occurring with officers towards whether it would be possible to grant a permit and discussions towards that. The ultimate consideration of the application and all the factors, including the loss of the heritage building, the overall height, and the detailed assessment of the application which took place towards the end of that process, resolved or confirmed that support couldn't be granted, and there's absolute truth to the fact that negotiations continue in respect to any revised plans.
Thank you, Philip. Any further questions from councillors? No? Is there a councillor who wishes to move the motion?
I'd like to move the officer recommendation on page 36, and if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Seconded by Councillor Hopper. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yes, look, first of all, I think that regarding the allegation of council officers indicating support and then having refusal, I'm sure on many occasions council officers have indicated to applicants their concern, I'm not talking about this case, but their concern about an application, and then once there's some changes, etc., that application is approved. So I don't think you can have it both ways. Until there's a point where the actual decision is made by council officers, everything else is just superfluous, and it's part of the negotiation, and that's how it should be. All right, so and that's on both ways, whether it's in support of an application or against an application. We have before us a recommendation from our officers in writing saying that they're recommending refusal. So anything that's gone on before that or whatever, to me, is irrelevant and shouldn't be taken into consideration. I do think that I can understand why people want to go on the get to VCAT and get a decision, but I do think it would have been better to continue negotiations with our officers and continue, because I know for a fact that there's some aspects of the revised concept plans, and remember there's only one set of plans that have been submitted, but there's some aspects of the revised concept plans that our officers are probably quite comfortable with, but I'm sure there's some aspects of them that they're not comfortable with. The mediation is a result of the applicant going to VCAT, and so therefore I believe the mediation should run its course.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Hopper?
Thank you. Look, I strongly support everything that Councillor Kavanagh has just said. Preserving the heritage of our city is one of the most important things that we can do as a council in terms of our role on Urban Planning Committee. You know, we've heard from residents immediately before this in a street where there are some older properties sort of bemoaning the changes to that street. That's a different circumstance to this one where we, you know, do have a very strongly very old heritage building, which is recognised for its heritage character, and preserving it is something that we've recognised as a council, is something that we want to see happen well into the future. I strongly support the fact that the officers have made a recommendation to us based on the submitted plans. There have been no formally substituted plans proposed to council at any point. The discussions have been ongoing for such a lengthy period of time, I understand, because there's been no mediated vision able to be reached, which has appeased officers in terms of the heritage value of the building, in terms of the height restriction on this particular property, which, you know, a number of residents have outlined to us that they live in the Breeze Street corridor, and just constant height after height after height, pushing the boundaries in Breeze Street. We've seen it time and time again at Urban Planning Committee, where we've said 4 stories or 5 stories or 6 stories, and instead we get 7 stories or 8 stories or 9 stories, and Breeze Street is now suffering the consequences of that. And that's something that we've recognised previously at council. Only a couple of months ago, I asked for a report on the traffic situation that's taking place in Breeze Street, and the fact that, you know, there are accidents taking place because parked cars are being run into by people trying to run Breeze Street. So it is a major problem in this area, and I fully support the fact. And also, it needs to be stated that VCAT is listed for the 4th and 5th of January, and our next Urban Planning Committee meeting is taking place on the 27th of January. So I don't know how we could possibly have deferred this to make a decision at a later point.
Sorry, no further comments from the council.
Because it wouldn't have put us in a reasonable time frame.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Yes, Councillor Tapinos.
The process sometimes is quite challenging, particularly for people in the gallery, but it's quite clearly and very simple for councillors in this application. Whilst there is substituted plans that have been submitted and some plans that were circulated, and I've had a look at those plans and read that email, and I do find that is a vast improvement, particularly on the most important point in my view, and that is retaining the heritage building. But nonetheless, what we do have in front of us now are the only plans that have been formally submitted, and therefore I'm supporting the refusal. And I do so for 2 reasons. Firstly, I do believe that the heritage building should be entirely retained, and I'm sure we're going to come to an agreement as part of the mediation process at VCAT over that. So I'm pleased about that. But nonetheless, speaking here tonight, I raise that point because the application in front of us does include not retaining the heritage fabric that is internal. Secondly, the other major point is height, and we do have our structure plan, and I'll just mention this for the benefit of people in the gallery. There is in our structure plan heights that are pretty much determined, but they're not mandatory. They are discretionary. And yes, we would love to see just 7 stories, but unfortunately what we've actually seen happen time and time again is that applicants go to VCAT and get more. So to say it's 8 stories, yes, there are other 8-storey applications, other 8-storey buildings. There's a 9-storey building, and there are other 9-storey applications. This is really disappointing, and it's, I guess, unfair for the community in many ways. But that is our fault and our problem because it is a discretionary height, and quite often they go there seeking a little bit extra and a little bit extra. And I and the council have been running a campaign to change that and make it mandatory, so the community knows that what limits are in the structure plans are a maximum that could be built. But unfortunately, this is not supported by government, and quite often it's overturned by VCAT. So although I suspect that is going to be one of the major issues, do be mindful that there are plenty of other buildings and other life permits on the site which are 8 stories or more. In regards to some of the architectural elements of the building, I think a lot of those will probably be negotiated through, and a resolution will be found during the VCAT process. So in many ways, I sort of urge officers and the applicant to keep working as part of the VCAT process to make sure that we get the best possible outcome, and I'm confident that that would occur. But I don't see how tonight Urban Planning Committee can make any other decision but to refuse the application that's effectively in front of us. That doesn't mean it ends there. It's only a recommendation that is effectively going to be our position in the negotiations at VCAT. We need to continue those, so I urge you to formally substitute those plans so we can actually be discussing about what really we want to see, not what's being presented.
Thank you, Councillor Tafnos. Any further speakers? I'll put Councillor Kavanagh's motion for a refusal to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll pass to the officer to sum up the process.
Thank you, Councillor. The Urban Planning Committee has resolved that if it was in a position to decide on the application, it would issue a notice of refusal based on the grounds provided in the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you for attending this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope this has changed your opinion of council.
The best council.
Best council, right. Great.
The best, yeah.